President Trump wants to bring back the Department of War, the original name for what we now call the Department of Defense. At first glance, it might sound like just a label, but behind it are questions about America's identity, its military strength, and how the world sees us. You probably haven't heard all the details, but I've gone through the history and the new proposals. And here, I'm breaking down exactly what this change means, why Trump says it matters, the surprising pushback it's getting, and the hidden ripple effects that could shape America's future role in the world. So, what does this mean for America today, and why does it matter for you? Stick around, because understanding this could change the way you think about the role of the military and the message we send to the world. Before we get started, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the name Department of War sounds stronger, or does it feel too aggressive? After you share, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more breakdowns like this. Now, let's get into it. President Trump first mentioned the idea casually during a meeting with the South Korean president. He said, "We want defense, but we want offense too." And when he said that, it wasn't just a throwaway comment. It was a signal that he wants to reshape not only the name, but the way Americans think about the role of the military. And honestly, that's the core of this push. It's not just about changing a sign on a building. It's about reshaping the image of American strength. His Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has even started calling himself Secretary of War in speeches and online. And when he polled his followers, more than half agreed with the change. So then, why does this matter? Well, let's go back a bit. The original War Department oversaw America's military victories from the Revolution through World War II. After the devastation of that war, though, President Truman and Congress decided to rename and reorganize. They merged the War and Navy departments into what we now call the Department of Defense. The reason was simple. After the horrors of global war, the focus shifted to defense and deterrence. The idea was to position America as a peacekeeper rather than an aggressor. And it's worth remembering, leaders at the time were focused on avoiding another world war. So the choice of the word defense was very deliberate. It told the world that America's goal was stability, not constant conflict. And here's something you might find surprising. This was never just semantics. The shift in language mirrored a shift in policy. The Cold War wasn't about declaring war every year. It was about containing threats, avoiding another world war, and building global alliances. So, the word defense became a reflection of that strategy. That's why many historians argue that words matter here. They set the tone for what the country represents. Now, fast forward to today. Supporters of Trump's proposal say calling it defense makes America sound timid, like we're only reactive. They argue that calling it war signals strength and clarity, that the U.S. military's job is to fight and win wars. Trump himself has said, "As Department of War, we won everything." He points back to that era as proof. And for his supporters, this isn't about nostalgia. It's about reviving a stronger national identity. But let's pause and think. What happens if the name really does change? On one hand, it could boost pride among some Americans who feel the military's mission is being watered down by modern politics. On the other hand, it could send a signal to the world that America is prioritizing aggression over peace. Critics argue that allies might see it as a red flag, and adversaries could feel provoked. A NATO official even said the change could alienate partners and escalate tensions. And you know what's interesting? It's all about perception. The actual missions, the budgets, the strategies, they don't change just because the name does. So then, this raises the question, is this mostly symbolic? Some experts think so. One columnist even joked, renaming the Pentagon the Genghis Khan Palace wouldn't suddenly make us conquer half the earth. But symbolism has power. Think about it. Branding shapes how we interpret everything from product to policies. And when it comes to the military, branding can affect morale at home and diplomacy abroad. Another thing to consider is how this plays into politics. Senator Mike Lee has introduced the Department of War Restoration Act, while Representative Greg Steube added an amendment in Congress to push the same idea. For Trump supporters, it becomes a rallying cry, a symbol of rejecting political correctness and restoring America's true strength. For opponents, it looks like a distraction from real challenges. Things like cybersecurity, military readiness, and global conflicts that actually need solutions. Speaking of which, there's also history to think about. The name Department of War brings us back to a time when America was emerging as a world power. But it was also a time before the nuclear age, before terrorism, before cyber threats. You see, today's world is very different. The term defense fits better for an era where wars are often about deterrence, intelligence, and preventing attacks before they start. So, changing back to war might feel outdated to some. Now, let's step back and ask, what does this mean for you as an American citizen? Well, the words on the building don't change your daily life, but they do shape the narrative around how your country sees itself. If the U.S. presents itself as a nation of defense, it signals one story. If it presents itself as a nation of war, it signals another. And that has ripple effects on foreign policy, on how tax dollars are spent, and even on how future generations understand America's role in the world. And guess what? There's also a legal wrinkle. Because the Department of Defense was created by Congress, most experts say Congress would have to approve a name change. The White House could try to find loopholes with executive orders, but it wouldn't be straightforward. So, even though Trump is pushing it, it's not guaranteed. That means this debate might go on for months or even years before we see a real outcome. But here's where it gets interesting. Even if the name never officially changes, the conversation itself shapes public opinion. If more Americans start calling it the Department of War, even casually, that in itself rebrands the institution in the minds of the people. That's how language works. It seeps into everyday thought before policy ever catches up. So then, where do we land? Is this a bold move toward honesty, calling things what they are? Or is it a risky step that could push America toward unnecessary aggression? Honestly, it depends on your perspective. Some people want a military that projects pure strength. Others want one that emphasizes balance and peacekeeping. And both of those instincts exist in American history. And I want to bring it back to you. When you hear the phrase Department of War, how does it make you feel? Does it stir pride, concern, or maybe a bit of both? Share your answer below, because this is one of those questions where everyone's perspective adds value. And as always, thanks for sticking with me through this discussion. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future breakdowns like this. Because whether the Department of Defense changes its name or not, the real story is about what kind of country we want to be, and that's something worth keeping an eye on.